Before you continue listening, pay close attention, because there is a reason this message has arrived in front of you at this exact moment. Out of all the voices, distractions, and endless streams of information surrounding you every day, something led you here. That is not an accident. There are moments in life when events seem ordinary on the surface, yet beneath them something far greater is unfolding. This is one of those moments. If lately you have felt a strange tension inside yourself, an unexplainable feeling that your life is approaching a turning point, then what you are experiencing is more significant than you realize. The new moon portal is already active. Its influence is not limited to the heavens above. It is moving through your inner world, touching parts of your awareness that have remained dormant for longer than you know. Perhaps you have noticed subtle changes appearing without warning, a growing dissatisfaction with routines that once felt comfortable, a feeling that old goals no longer inspire you in the same way, sudden emotional fluctuations that seem to emerge from nowhere. One day you feel restless and unsettled. The next you experience a brief moment of certainty that seems to illuminate everything. These shifts may appear disconnected, but they are not. They are signs that something deep within you has begun responding to a larger cycle of transformation. What you are feeling is not random emotional turbulence. It is the beginning of activation. Most people move through periods like this without recognizing what is happening. They dismiss the signals. They ignore the inner calling. They convince themselves that nothing is changing. Yet there are certain individuals who cannot escape the feeling that something important is unfolding beneath the surface. If you are hearing these words right now, chances are you belong to that group. Long before your conscious mind understood it, another part of you recognized that a shift was approaching. That quiet inner knowing, the voice that continues to whisper that there is more waiting for you beyond your current reality, has been guiding you toward this moment for a very long time. This is why what you're experiencing feels so personal. The signs, the questions, the growing awareness, the sense that old explanations no longer satisfy you, all of it is connected. You are not inventing these feelings. You're responding to a process that is already underway. In many ways, this portal is not merely opening around you. It is interacting with you directly. It is responding to your readiness, your willingness to evolve, and your capacity to move beyond the limitations that once defined your life. Recently, you may have found yourself carrying emotional weight that seems difficult to explain. There may be periods when everything feels unusually intense, followed by moments of unexpected relief. You may feel exhausted without understanding why. Certain memories may return. Certain emotions may surface with surprising force. At first glance, this can feel unsettling. It can appear as though your life has become unstable. But that interpretation misses what is truly occurring. What feels like disorder is actually refinement. What appears to be disruption is a carefully orchestrated process of adjustment. The new moon is working beneath the level of ordinary awareness. It is exposing illusions that have quietly shaped your decisions. It is loosening attachments that have outlived their purpose. It is revealing patterns that no longer belong in the next chapter of your life. Because of that, the experience can feel intense. Real transformation rarely arrives in a comfortable form. It challenges familiar structures. It asks difficult questions. It pushes against the identities we have spent years constructing. Yet every part of this process serves a purpose. There is an important truth many people spend years avoiding. You cannot postpone the moment you were meant to face. You cannot permanently distract yourself from your own evolution. Eventually, every person arrives at the crossroads where remaining the same becomes more painful than changing. That is where this portal meets you. Not somewhere outside of your reality, but directly within your journey. This new moon functions like a powerful reset point. Past experiences, present circumstances, and future possibilities are converging into a single moment of awareness. That is why the pressure feels so real. You are being asked to examine who you have become and who you are capable of becoming. The version of yourself that once protected you may no longer be able to guide you forward. Old beliefs that once provided security may now feel restrictive. Parts of your identity that seem permanent may suddenly feel too small for the person you are becoming. This can be uncomfortable because growth often requires releasing what is familiar before what is new becomes visible. If you look back over the recent months, you may begin noticing a pattern. Relationships that quietly drifted away. Situations that ended without clear explanations. Interests and ambitions that gradually lost their emotional hold over you. At times you may have wondered why you felt drawn towards solitude, why reflection became more important than constant activity, why you felt compelled to question things you previously accepted without hesitation. None of these developments occurred by chance. They were preparing you for this threshold. What once appeared to be isolated experiences are now revealing themselves as pieces of a much larger picture. The universe has been arranging circumstances, lessons, and realizations long before you consciously understood their purpose. Under this new moon, those signals become harder to ignore. What seemed hidden begins to reveal itself. What seemed confusing begins to make sense. And what felt like loss begins to reveal itself as redirection. The most important thing to understand is that not everyone will recognize this process. Not everyone will respond to these energies in the same way. Readiness cannot be forced. It emerges when the soul reaches a point where expansion becomes necessary. And despite any doubts that may still linger in your mind, your presence here suggests that something within you is already prepared for what comes next. Not because you possess every answer, not because you are free from fear, but because you are willing to continue forward even when certainty has not fully arrived. That willingness is the key that unlocks this doorway. And as this awareness continues to deepen, an even more profound realization begins to emerge from within. For a long time, there has been something living at the edge of your awareness, a realization that never completely revealed itself, yet never completely disappeared either. You may have felt it during quiet moments when the world grew still. You may have sensed it during periods of reflection when something inside you seemed to be trying to reach the surface. Yet each time it appeared, life provided another distraction, another responsibility, another reason to look away. Perhaps you convinced yourself it could wait. Perhaps you told yourself you would deal with it later. But no matter how many times you turned your attention elsewhere, that truth remained. It lingered patiently beneath the noise of everyday life, waiting for the moment when you would finally be ready to acknowledge it. That moment is arriving now. Under the influence of this new moon portal, what once remained hidden can no longer stay buried. The awareness that has been trying to emerge is gaining strength. The realization that once appeared only in fragments is beginning to take shape. This process is not something you can postpone indefinitely because it represents a necessary stage of your evolution. The more you attempt to avoid it, the more persistent it becomes. Not because life is working against you, but because something within you understands that your next chapter cannot begin until this truth is fully recognized. Deep down, you already know this. You may not possess all the details yet. You may not be able to explain it logically, yet there is a part of you that recognizes the direction in which your life is moving. That recognition is becoming stronger with each passing day. You may also have noticed that your relationship with time feels different lately. Certain days seem to disappear in an instant, while other moments stretch endlessly. There are periods when events unfold with remarkable speed, followed by moments that seem suspended between movement and stillness. This shift is not merely a product of imagination. It often accompanies periods of profound alignment. When you begin moving closer to your authentic path, life starts arranging experiences with greater precision. Suddenly, conversations happen at exactly the right moment. Opportunities emerge when they are needed most. Insights arrive one after another with such speed that it becomes difficult to keep up. At times, it may feel as though the pace of life has accelerated beyond your comfort zone. But what appears to be acceleration is often synchronization. Circumstances are being repositioned. Pieces are moving into place. What once seemed disconnected begins forming a coherent pattern. The challenge is that growth rarely waits until you feel completely prepared. Many people believe readiness is a feeling of certainty, confidence, and complete understanding. In reality, readiness is often something very different. It is alignment. It is the moment when your soul has outgrown the place where it currently stands, regardless of whether your mind feels comfortable taking the next step. As this shift deepens, another experience often emerges. Fear. Not the dramatic kind that announces itself loudly, but the subtle form that quietly influences your decisions. It may appear as hesitation. It may disguise itself as logic. It may encourage you to postpone action until conditions feel perfect. It may tempt you to return to familiar situations simply because they are familiar. This is the final defense mechanism of the version of yourself that was designed for survival. That older self learned how to avoid risk, avoid disappointment, and avoid uncertainty. It served an important purpose for a season of your life. But survival and expansion are not the same thing. The strategies that once protected you may now be preventing your growth. That is why this moment feels so significant. You are not merely choosing between what feels comfortable and what feels uncomfortable. You are choosing between continuing an old identity and stepping into a new one. Every major transformation eventually arrives at this crossroads. There comes a point when gathering information is no longer enough. Preparing is no longer enough. Waiting is no longer enough. Action becomes necessary. The remarkable thing is that transformation rarely demands a dramatic leap. Most often it begins with a single decision, one conversation, one commitment, one act of courage, one willingness to move despite uncertainty. From the outside, that first step may appear insignificant. Yet energetically it changes everything because it signals that you are willing to trust the process before seeing the final outcome. Once that signal is sent, reality begins responding. Guidance becomes easier to recognize. Opportunities reveal themselves. New pathways appear where none seemed to exist before. The unknown does not typically reveal itself in advance. It reveals itself through participation. Every step forward uncovers the next piece of the journey. You may already be witnessing evidence of this transformation around you. Certain structures in your life may feel less stable than they once did. Relationships may be changing. Habits that once defined your routine may no longer fit. Even aspects of your identity may seem to be loosening their hold. Initially, this can feel unsettling because the human mind often interprets change as loss. Yet what is occurring goes much deeper than simple loss. What is leaving your life is making room for what is meant to arrive. The new moon portal functions with remarkable precision. It identifies what has fulfilled its purpose and begins clearing space for what aligns with your future. This process can feel uncomfortable because it asks you to release attachments before replacements become visible. However, what appears to be an ending is often a form of liberation. You cannot construct a future that reflects your authentic self while standing on foundations built for a previous version of your life. Before something new can emerge, space must be created. There is also a phase that many people misunderstand. Just before major breakthroughs occur, life often becomes unusually quiet. Progress seems invisible. Movement appears to slow. You may even wonder whether anything is happening at all. This silence can create frustration because it feels like stagnation. But beneath the surface, an enormous amount of activity is taking place. Adjustments are being made that your conscious mind cannot yet perceive. Conditions are aligning, lessons are integrating, timing is being refined. The universe operates with precision, not haste. What appears inactive is often preparation occurring beyond your immediate awareness. At the same time, something else is becoming stronger. That inner guidance you once struggled to hear is beginning to grow more distinct. The voice of intuition is no longer content to remain in the background. It is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. You may notice stronger instincts, clearer feelings, and a deeper sense of knowing. Sometimes that guidance may lead you toward choices that challenge logic or contradict old expectations. Yet intuition is not designed to keep you trapped within old limitations. It exists to help you move beyond them. The more attention you give it, the stronger it becomes. The more trust you place in it, the more accurate it feels. Under this new moon, that connection is strengthening in ways that may surprise you. And as your awareness continues expanding, another layer of this transformation is preparing to reveal itself. Something is intensifying beneath the surface now. It may not be visible to anyone around you, and perhaps you have not even found the words to describe it yet. But you can feel it. There is a growing force pressing gently against your awareness, a presence that seems impossible to silence no matter how busy life becomes. This pressure is different from ordinary stress. It is not created by responsibilities, expectations, or circumstances. It comes from somewhere much deeper. It comes from the part of you that has always known there was more waiting beyond the boundaries of your current reality. For a long time, it was possible to postpone this awareness. It was possible to focus on other priorities, to become absorbed in routines, distractions, and obligations. It was possible to convince yourself that there would be another opportunity later, another season for change, another moment to answer the call that quietly echoed within you. But something has shifted. The energy of this new moon portal has awakened a dormant part of your consciousness, and once awakened, it cannot easily return to sleep. What makes this experience so powerful is that it is not introducing you to something unfamiliar. It is reminding you of something you have always carried within. Deep inside, beyond every doubt and every fear, there has always been a knowing that your life was intended for more than repetition, more than survival, more than simply moving from one day to the next. That knowing is becoming impossible to ignore, because what once felt like a distant possibility is beginning to move closer. The future you sense but could never fully grasp is no longer standing on the horizon. It is arriving. You may have noticed another interesting pattern emerging during this period. The harder you try to force certainty, the more elusive it becomes. Plans change unexpectedly. Outcomes refuse to follow carefully designed expectations. Situations develop in ways you could never have predicted. At first, this can feel frustrating because the mind naturally seeks stability through control. It wants guarantees. It wants clarity before action. It wants assurance that every step will lead exactly where it intends. Yet this portal is exposing something many people spend their entire lives misunderstanding. Control was never the source of your security. It was merely a strategy for managing uncertainty. It created the appearance of predictability in a world that is constantly evolving. Now, under this new moon, that illusion is beginning to dissolve, not because you are losing your power, but because you are being introduced to a greater form of it. The transition from control to trust is one of the most challenging experiences a person can face. Trust requires vulnerability. It requires the willingness to continue forward even when the outcome remains hidden. It asks you to believe that there is intelligence operating beyond your immediate understanding. Not blind faith, but a deeper confidence that life is unfolding according to patterns you cannot always see in the moment. As uncomfortable as this process may feel, it contains an extraordinary gift. When control loosens its grip, alignment becomes possible. Instead of forcing reality into predetermined shapes, You begin responding to the opportunities, lessons, and directions that are naturally emerging. You stop fighting the current and start moving with it. And when that happens, life often begins opening doors that effort alone could never unlock. There has always been a path uniquely designed for you. Even during periods when everything felt confusing, even when you believed you were lost, that path remained present. It guided you through challenges that strengthened you. It led you through endings that created space for new beginnings. It carried you through experiences that seemed random at the time, but now reveal themselves as necessary parts of your development. Under this new moon, that path is becoming easier to recognize, not because every answer is suddenly available, but because your connection to it is growing stronger. You may feel drawn towards certain decisions. Certain ideas may continue returning to your attention. Certain directions may create an unexpected sense of peace, even when they seem uncertain. These are not accidents. They are signals pointing toward what is authentically aligned with your soul. The remarkable thing is that this path often feels both unfamiliar and deeply familiar at the same time. It feels new because it asks you to move beyond old limitations. Yet it feels familiar because, on some level, you have always known it existed. You are not creating it from nothing. You are reconnecting with something that has been waiting beneath the surface of your awareness for a very long time. Every transformation eventually reaches a critical threshold. It is the moment when the pressure of remaining the same becomes greater than the fear of changing. Many people mistake this phase for failure because it often arrives alongside exhaustion, uncertainty, and emotional intensity. You may feel stretched beyond your comfort zone. You may wonder how much longer you can continue navigating the unknown. But what feels like a breaking point is often a breakthrough point in disguise. The old structures that once defined you can no longer contain who you are becoming. The beliefs, attachments, and identities that once served a purpose are reaching their limits. This creates tension because part of you wants to move forward while another part still seeks the safety of what is familiar. Yet the pressure continues building because growth is no longer optional. The force of transformation has become stronger than the force of resistance. And that is precisely why this moment is so important. What appears to be falling apart is actually releasing its hold on you. What appears to be ending is creating the conditions for a beginning. You are not approaching collapse. You are approaching emergence. Even now, subtle shifts are occurring within you. Your perceptions are changing. Your responses are changing. The way you interpret your experiences is changing. These adjustments may seem small individually, yet together they are reshaping your entire energetic foundation. This is why the transformation feels so profound. It is not merely influencing external circumstances. It is changing the inner state from which every future decision will be made. Once that inner state changes, reality begins responding differently. New opportunities appear because you are able to recognize them. Different people enter your life because your energy is no longer attracting the same dynamics. New thoughts emerge because old limitations no longer define your perspective. This is the true nature of transformation. It does not begin with external events. It begins with internal evolution. And now everything is leading toward a single, quiet decision. Not one that requires public declarations or dramatic actions, but one that forms within the deepest part of your being. The question is simple. Will you move toward the version of yourself that is calling you forward, even if doing so requires releasing what feels familiar? Or will you continue holding on to identities, situations, and patterns that no longer reflect who you are becoming? This is not a question of success or failure. It is not a question of right or wrong. It is a question of alignment. And if you are honest with yourself, beneath every layer of uncertainty, beneath every lingering doubt, you already know which direction your soul has been pointing toward all along. That knowing is becoming clearer now, and what happens next begins with your willingness to trust it. The path in front of you may not feel simple. It may challenge assumptions you have carried for years. It may ask you to leave behind familiar ways of thinking, familiar identities, and familiar comforts. Yet despite the uncertainty, there is something unmistakable about it. It feels real. It resonates in a place deeper than logic. It carries a sense of truth that cannot be manufactured, forced, or borrowed from anyone else. And when you finally choose to follow that truth, something remarkable begins to happen. Life starts responding in ways the mind could never have planned. Pieces begin connecting. Circumstances begin aligning. What once seemed impossible to understand gradually reveals its purpose. Not because every question is answered immediately, but because you are finally moving in harmony with the direction your soul has been pointing toward all along. You are standing at an extraordinary point now. Behind you exists the collection of experiences that shaped you, challenged you, tested you, and prepared you. Ahead of you exists a reality that has not fully revealed itself yet, a future waiting for your participation. Between those two worlds stands this threshold. This new moon portal is not merely another phase in a repeating cycle. It represents a profound point of transition, a crossing between what has been and what is ready to emerge. What makes this moment so powerful is that uncertainty and certainty are existing side by side. Part of you may still wonder what comes next. Part of you may still question how everything will unfold. Yet beneath those questions, there is another feeling becoming stronger, a quiet recognition that you are exactly where you need to be, a sense that despite every challenge, every delay, and every unexpected twist, your journey has brought you precisely to the place you were meant to arrive. This threshold is not appearing in your life to measure your worth or determine whether you are good enough. Its purpose is much deeper than that. It exists to reveal what has always been present beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and fear. It is inviting you to see yourself more clearly than ever before. Not the version shaped by external approval, not the version created to meet other people's expectations, but the authentic self that has patiently waited beneath every mask and every limitation. And there is something important you must be willing to acknowledge, whether or not it feels comfortable. A chapter of your life is already coming to a close. This ending is not dramatic. It is not arriving with sudden destruction. Instead, it is unfolding quietly, steadily, and irreversibly. The old structures that once defined your reality are losing their power. The routines that once felt permanent no longer fit. The identity you carried for so long is becoming too small for the person you are becoming. That realization can stir unexpected emotions. There may be moments when you miss aspects of the past, even the parts that no longer serve you. Human beings naturally develop attachments to familiarity. Even when something has been outgrown, it can still feel difficult to release. You may find yourself looking back at previous versions of your life with a strange mixture of gratitude and sadness. Not because you want to return, but because you recognize that a chapter is ending. Yet it is important to understand what is actually happening. Nothing essential is being taken away from you. What is dissolving are the structures that have fulfilled their purpose. What is fading are the patterns that can no longer support your growth. What is ending is not your truth. It is everything that prevented you from fully expressing it. This is why the process feels both emotional and liberating at the same time. The old life is not being destroyed. It is gently releasing its hold so that a new reality can emerge. Every transformation follows this pattern. Before something greater can fully arrive, space must be created for it. Before a new identity can take shape, the old one must loosen its grip. If you become very still, if you listen beneath the noise of fear and beneath the echoes of old stories, you may notice something else. There is a pull, quiet but persistent, subtle, yet impossible to ignore. It is drawing your attention toward the future, not toward an imagined fantasy, but toward a genuine possibility that is beginning to take form. That future is not demanding perfection from you. It is not asking you to solve every problem before moving forward. It is not waiting for you to eliminate every doubt. Instead, it is asking for trust. It is asking for your willingness to continue taking steps in the direction that feels aligned, even when the entire picture remains hidden. This is how meaningful change is created. Not through force, not through constant control, not through endless attempts to predict every outcome. It is created through alignment. Every decision that reflects your authentic truth strengthens the bridge between who you have been and who you are becoming. Every courageous step deepens that connection. Every act of trust reinforces the path unfolding before you. When you look back over your life from this perspective, a remarkable realization begins to emerge. What once appeared random was never random at all. The setbacks that frustrated you, the delays that tested your patience, the unexpected detours that seemed to lead nowhere. Each experience contributed something essential. Every challenge refined your awareness. Every uncertainty expanded your understanding. Every difficult season strengthened qualities within you that could not have developed any other way. There were moments when you believed you were lost, moments when nothing made sense, moments when you questioned your direction and wondered whether you had somehow fallen behind. Yet from a broader perspective, you could begin to see that none of those moments represented failure. They were preparation. They were shaping the version of you capable of standing where you are now. Because what is unfolding through this new moon portal requires a different level of awareness. It requires the wisdom gained through experience. It requires the strength developed through challenge. It requires the perspective that can only emerge after questioning, searching, and growing. And now, as this portal reaches its most powerful point, understanding begins replacing confusion. The pieces start fitting together. The reasons behind certain experiences become clearer. What once felt meaningless begins revealing its purpose. You start recognizing that you were never abandoned by your path. You are being guided toward it. This is why the moment you are standing in now carries such significance. It is not merely the conclusion of one chapter. It is the doorway into another. It is the place where awareness deepens into awakening. The place where potential begins transforming into reality. Your life was never intended to remain confined by limitations that diminish your spirit. It was never meant to revolve around patterns that keep you disconnected from your deeper purpose. Everything you have experienced has been preparing you for this alignment, this recognition, this awakening. And now the question is no longer whether change is coming. That question has already been answered. Change has begun. Something within you has already awakened. Something within you has already crossed the threshold. The real question now is what you choose to do with that awakening, because awareness alone does not transform a life. Recognition alone does not create a new future. Transformation begins when you decide to honor what you know, trust what you feel, and move forward in alignment with the truth that has finally revealed itself. And that decision, more than anything else, will determine how far this journey is capable of taking you.